There is a country on the world map where fear is not just an emotion, but a system. North Korea has built not just a dictatorship, but a regime where everyone lives under the threat of being sent to a camp. This is not a metaphor. We're talking about real concentration camps that still exist today. According to human rights organizations, the country operates dozens of labor camps and at least 4 political ones. Not only enemies of the people are held there, but also their families, even children. Collective responsibility is the norm. Prisoners are forced into hard labor, and in the camps there is no right to defense, complaint, or justice. Food is meager, and there is no medical care. Former prisoners speak of torture, rape, and public executions. The most notorious is Camp Number 14, where even the children of traitors were held, and where death was considered commonplace. According to some estimates, up to 80,000 people are currently held in such camps. This is not an accident, but a deliberately constructed system of intimidation. It works because fear in North Korea is not a temporary condition, but a constant reality that paralyzes even the thought of resistance. No other country in the world uses nuclear weapons the way North Korea does. For North Korea, they are not just a military asset, but a tool for political survival. The first test was conducted in 2006, after which Pyongyang regularly showcased new missiles, some of which are theoretically capable of reaching US territory. But why does Kim need this? The answer is simple. The nuclear arsenal gives the regime immunity from external invasion. The threat of war involving a nuclear power is simply too great. In addition, nuclear weapons are presented as a shield against enemies, Southerners, Americans, traitors. This cements power, justifies hardships, and strengthens the image of the leader as the nation's protector. Propaganda regularly emphasizes, if it weren't for our bomb, we would have been wiped off the face of the earth long ago. Against this backdrop, even poverty is presented as the price of independence. Sanctions only intensify internal mobilization. In reality, nuclear weapons are less a shield from the outside world than from internal collapse. Formally, North Korea's economy is planned and socialist, but in practice, the country has long survived in the shadows and thanks to the shadows. The underground economy, smuggling, counterfeiting currency, and drugs, these are not marginal activities, but part of the state's survival strategy. Back in the 1990s, North Korea began printing high-quality counterfeit dollars, known as super dollars. Later, counterfeit cigarettes, pills, and even weapons were added to the mix. According to American intelligence, just from arms sales, the regime earned up to $1.5 billion a year. This money bypassed sanctions and was used for the elite, the military, and the needs of the authorities. In addition, thousands of North Koreans work illegally abroad, in China, Russia, and other Asian countries, handing over most of their earnings to the state. North Korea is not building a traditional trade system, but rather a network of opaque financial flows laundered through third countries. Even diplomats take part in this gray economy. Everything that can be exchanged for foreign currency is used. This is an economy of poverty, but also one that has adapted to the impossible. An old-fashioned dictatorship has unexpectedly become a technological predator. North Korea actively uses cyber attacks to steal digital assets, cryptocurrencies, data, and logins. The Lazarus Group, linked to North Korea's intelligence services, has carried out large-scale hacks from banks to exchanges. In 2024, the damage from such attacks amounted to about $800 million. This money doesn't just disappear, it goes straight into the regime's treasury. First, the stolen funds are converted into cryptocurrency. Then they pass through dozens of mixers and wallets, losing their trail. As a result, even experts can't always identify the final recipient. The acquired assets are used to finance military programs and purchase sanctioned goods. Moreover, North Korean IT specialists work under false names on freelance platforms, gain access to the code of Western companies, and transmit the data to Pyongyang. This is the digital economy of crime, a new face of an old dictatorship. Technology has given the Kims a new way to profit from a world that has shut them out. Any other regime would have collapsed long ago under such pressure, but North Korea survives largely thanks to China. It is their main and almost only major ally. More than 80% of North Korea's foreign trade is with China. Oil, grain, medicine, and equipment come from there. Officially, Beijing supports the sanctions, but in reality, it leaves loopholes through which the regime gets everything it needs. Why? China does not want the collapse of its neighboring state. If Pyongyang falls, a flow of refugees will pour into northeastern China. And if the North unites with the South, pro-Western states will appear right next door. For China, this is strategically unacceptable, so it shields North Korea from excessive pressure, provides economic lifelines, and offers diplomatic cover. This is a shield without which the Kim regime might not survive. At the same time, China keeps North Korea in a certain state of dependence, gaining resources, influence, and a buffer against the United States. The Kims understand. Without Beijing, it would be hard for their regime to survive. But China also understands a North Korea that is too weak is also a threat. Kim Il-sung is not just the founder of North Korea, but the architect of one of the world's most enduring dictatorships. After the end of World War II, he was placed at the head of the country with the support of the Soviet Union, but quickly transformed from a puppet into an absolute leader. He built a system of governance in which not the party, not the army, and not even the state were the main link, but he himself. The cult of personality began to form as early as the 1940s. Official biographies attributed to him heroism in the struggle against the Japanese, victories that never happened, and the wisdom of a superhuman. The entire system was subordinated to his image. From an early age, children memorized his speeches, his portrait hung in every home, and schools had mandatory ideology lessons. But the most astonishing thing is that he did not leave power even after his death. In 1994, he became the eternal president, and to this day, he is still formally considered the head of state. This created a unique precedent. The dictator did not simply rule, he is forever inscribed into the political structure. His model of governance based on fear, isolation, and absolute loyalty still operates today, unchanged for decades. North Korea became the first communist country where power is passed down by inheritance. After Kim Il-sung's death, his son Kim Jong-il came to power. This was not unexpected. The cult of the son was being created even while the father was still alive. He was called the beloved leader. Fake biographies were published claiming he wrote operas, developed rockets, and won at golf with impossible scores. This was a deliberate step to legitimize power as dynastic. In 2011, after the death of Kim Jong-il, the throne passed to Kim Jong-un, his young son who had just turned 30. To legitimize the new leader, everything was used: his visual resemblance to his grandfather, urgent promotions in the military, mass portraits, and campaigns of deification. The elite understood in the chaos of succession, not only the system could perish, but they themselves as well. That is why the process of transferring power was swift, strict, and public. Today, Kim Jong-un is not just the head of state, he is the third link in a sacred dynasty, a symbol of stability created by a system that operates not by the laws of a republic, but of a monarchy. The DPRK is a country where ideology is not just important, it explains everything. The central concept is Juche. This philosophy, created by Kim Il-sung himself, means reliance on one's own strength. In theory, it is a path to independence. In reality, it is a justification for total isolation. The second key concept is Songun, which translates as military-first policy. According to it, the army is the foundation of society. These ideas are taught in schools, celebrated in songs, and carved in stone on monuments. Even economic failures are explained ideologically. Poverty is the result of resisting enemies, not the mistakes of the leadership. The image of the enemy is constant. It is either the United States, South Korea, or traitors within. All life in the country revolves around these ideas. Every citizen is required not just to be loyal, but to be a true believer. Ideology acts as a barrier. It keeps foreign ideas out and blocks internal doubts. Those who try to think differently automatically become enemies. As a result, the Juche ideology is not just a political tool, but a shield that protects the people from reality and secures the power of the dynasty. In North Korea, a person cannot find out how the rest of the world lives. Television, radio, and newspapers are strictly controlled by the state. There is no internet at all in the Western sense. Instead, there is an internal network, accessible only to a select few and filled only with approved information. Any attempt to obtain outside information is a serious crime. Watching South Korean dramas can land you in a camp, and listening to foreign music can do the same. From childhood, schools instill that South Korea is poor, the USA is an aggressor, and the Kims are the people's only protectors. Even geography and history are taught in a way that benefits the regime. People do not know that food can be abundant, that it is possible to travel freely abroad, that elections, the internet, and freedom of speech exist. Information becomes a weapon. That is why the regime so fiercely guards its information border. Any leak, any flash drive with a TV series can change perceptions, and therefore undermine the system. In a world where truth is a threat, lies become an essential element of power. This is not a mistake, but a carefully guarded survival strategy. The Kim regime is sustained not only by fear, but also by a system of a loyal elite. Inside the country, there is a strict hierarchy, from ordinary citizens to the highest officials. The elite consists of army generals, party functionaries, and heads of special services. They live better than anyone else. Separate neighborhoods, rations, access to medicine, cars, and even the internet. But this comfort comes at the price of absolute loyalty. Any doubt, attempt at independence, or lack of enthusiasm is seen as a threat. Examples of crackdowns on high-ranking figures serve as a reminder to everyone else: no one is above the leader. One of the most high-profile cases was the execution of Kim Jong-un's uncle, Jang Song-taek, who had previously been considered the second most powerful person in the country. He was publicly accused of treason and eliminated. Such demonstrative cruelty is no accident. It strengthens the regime's power, paralyzes the elite with fear, and makes loyalty a matter of survival. This elite doesn't just support the regime, they depend on it. Without it, they would be nothing. That's why Kim can be sure the shadow people will defend the throne to the very end. North Korea formally remains a socialist state with a centralized economy. But in practice, millions of people survive thanks to Jangmadan. semi-legal market stalls that appeared after the famine of the 1990s. Back then, centralized distribution failed, and people started trading out of necessity, some with vegetables, others with clothing, and some with homemade goods. At first, the authorities fought against the markets, arresting vendors, but soon realized that the jangmadang are what keep people from dying. Today, these markets have become an integral part of life. You can find imported goods, medicine, and food there. The authorities pretend they don't exist, even though everyone knows. Without them, the country would collapse. Local officials have even imposed taxes on vendors, personally profiting in exchange for their silent permission. Moreover, some members of the elite themselves invest in these markets through intermediaries. It's a strange symbiosis. The system pretends to control everything, and the people pretend to obey. As a result, in a country where private property is banned, it is private initiative that has become a safety net and a means of maintaining stability. On the international stage, the idea of uniting the two Koreas is a symbol of hope. But for the Kim regime, this is a terrifying scenario. Reunification is not just a diplomatic process, but a threat to the very existence of the entire elite. After all, what will happen if the borders open? The people of the North will instantly find out how they have been deceived. They will see that in South Korea there is internet, elections, food without ration cards, freedom of movement and speech. This knowledge will destroy the myths on which the regime is built. The elite, including generals and party leaders, understand that in a unified country there will be no place for them, they will not be accepted, they will not be trusted, and some may even be put on trial. That is why they will resist until the very end. Propaganda does everything it can to demonize the South. Supposedly, there is rampant crime, poverty, and dependence on the United States there. Any cooperation with Southerners is presented as an act of betrayal. Even hints at reconciliation are harshly suppressed. In this context, North Korea is not afraid of an attack. It is afraid of the truth, because the truth will bring down not only the walls and borders, but the very essence of the Kim regime's power. That is why the regime is willing to endure poverty as long as it prevents rapprochement. The Kim regime is one of the longest lasting in the world. It survived the collapse of the USSR, endured famine, sanctions, and international isolation. How is this possible? The secret lies in its unique ability to adapt. Power does not remain static, it adjusts. When there is famine, it allows private markets. When there is crisis, it makes concessions to the elite. When necessary, it demonstrates openness by sending delegations to the Olympics. At the same time, the core remains, the cult of personality, the Juche ideology, fear and isolation. The regime is not afraid of contradictions. It can be anti-capitalist while trading cryptocurrency, remain closed off but steal technology, be isolated yet participate in summits. Such flexibility makes it almost invulnerable. Even failures are used as a tool for mobilization, as if to say, we suffer for the sake of independence. The elite gets its share, the people get explanations, and the army gets priority. The entire system is held together not only by coercion, but also by calculation. The Kims have proven, to be eternal, you don't need to be strong, you need to be needed. Needed precisely by that system of chaos, fear, and faith that they themselves created.